Nature itself is just incredible at teaching us things. Look at the way that a tractor is and the way it's constructed, and look at the way that ants hold their ground on the ground and are not easily blown away by the wind because of the traction that they're able to achieve, and the dynamics and the spread of their limbs. I was able to be a very stable type of a machine. You know, if you were to, as we did do, imitate the limbs of the ant, and when we create tractors and different tools. So the world is filled with knowledge, but the one thing that we need to get that knowledge is the interest, to be turned on by learning. And if you're turned on by learning, you'll be happy and your whole life. So yes, the love for learning is more important than the content of the learning itself. Because if you love learning, you'll always learn.
And part of it's, you know, upbringing and genetics. I mean, for one thing, obviously Judaism, a nation of scholars, anyone from a very Jewish upbringing or a very Jewish, just, it's a culture where we really appreciate and love education. I know my father always used to love to read to me when I was younger, and, you know, he really enjoyed it, and I could see that.
Yes.
And that, you know, brings you to it. He once told me that he read an article that, you know, said that while people think if you read to your kids when they're little, it'll help them love reading, what's more important is that they see that you enjoy reading. That when you have the option between watching TV or reading, going outside and playing with a ball or reading, that's what you choose, and that's a big influence. And I think that my family and of course Jewish culture, just very curious, very into knowledge. We always have been, and I love it. I just love it.
Well, you know, I'm reading a lot of history now myself. You mentioned that your father is a history buff, right?
Yes,
and
he's a history book with arms.
All right, and I discovered part of your team in the homeschooling thing is you have to have people to educate you, and your mom teaches you about sciences, your dad teaches you about history, and you're learning Hebrew through the Rosetta Stone program, and your grandmother's teaching you psychology, and alternating between your sister and your mother, you're learning English, advanced English, and your aunt, may she rest in peace, who just passed this last December, was a journalist and a poet. Her name?
Sandra Stern. She was a writer and a poet.
Sandra Stern. And she had left her mark and great influence on you.
Yes, she was a very special, beautiful person. She's one of those people that, even though their world is maybe one of the most painful situations you can be in,
how so?
Well, she had multiple sclerosis.
Oh, I see.
But even though she was in one of the most painful situations, she was so selfless and so giving to everyone else. She never say no if you asked her for something, and she was so smart and so sweet. Wow,
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. You had mentioned about, you know, how we became a nation of scholars. You know, we weren't always that way. Our service to God, okay, used to be the sacrificial rite in the temple. It was very centralized, and there's a whole history about that. And of course, when ancient Israel was defeated, you know, by the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Persians, our people were set into the four corners of the earth, and this is after the Talmud, and so that our vehicle, our way of maintaining our identity came through no longer the sacrificial rites, but came through the discussion and the learning of the law and the ethics, and so we evolved, we morphed into a people of the book, and so sometimes what seems like a great misfortune winds up making you stronger. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You know, that we survived this terrible expulsion from our homeland forced us to develop other means, other tools that we hadn't had to that point in time to survive and thrive. So now, you had mentioned that some of the things that I had mentioned in some of my responses to your questions were thought of as being somewhat controversial. And if in our remaining minutes, if you could just reflect on what some of those things might have been, because for me it's an educational experience as well.
Well, I mean, of course, it wasn't just you. It was also the other rabbis I talked to. But it was considered that some of the things that were said about how the unaffiliated, those who are unaffiliated with synagogues, how that is something of not really a good thing, how that's a bad thing to not be really connected to a synagogue.
Right,
you know, that could be offensive to those who are unaffiliated.
They feel that they're doing just fine through other types of associations with Judaism or Jewish life, and that synagogue is not necessarily the be-all and end-all of realizing one's Judaism. Or maybe that some people choose not to identify. Right? I'm a human being. I happen to be Jewish. I'm a American Jew, not a Jewish American. Right? That kind of thing.
I think in most scenarios, not all, definitely not all, but in most scenarios, if something comes up that someone finds great offense to, really great offense to, if it's not, unless it's an extremely offending, extremely cruel, if someone finds great offense to it, it's because they're defensive and they know that there is some truth to it.
When you get a reaction, you know you're onto something, huh? Well, we've run out of time for this particular interview, but I just want to say that I am very interested in great minds, and I think Leora is a really a wonderful intellect, and I was very impressed with her during the course of our interview, and I'm really happy that I have had this opportunity to invite her to the studio so that you can meet her too. So we've been speaking with Leora Waltuch, and thanks so much for being here. You're watching Rabbi Rock. Shalom.
I say there is a way love can win the day, and I know there'll come a time when love is all we lean upon. I know sometimes the hurt inside builds a wall of anger and pride. And some say there is no way that love can win the day. But I know in a blink of an eye the world can see what was hidden to all humanity. I know that love can win the day.